Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dsouza, and you are watching Million Opinions. In today's episode, our guest is Esha Dsouza. She is the CEO and partner of Corporate Group and a board member. Esha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Carlton, for having me. It's a pleasure to come on your show. Thank you.
Tell us your journey to where you are currently.
So for me, I was a very young, motivated, and I wanted to do something in life, So my father had this consulting business. At 17, I wanted to join him as an intern. So I joined as an intern with him and started my journey. At the age of 24, I was leading his business and I had a huge team reporting into me. Life had other plans. The tables turned and I was I was an employee in a company. It was one of a very big audit firms in Singapore called Loyap and Associates. It was a spin-off of Arthur Andersen's. So entire quality of, the working papers or the standards that they were following was, the best practices in the market. So that gave me a lot of experience and exposure. I brought that practices back into my father's firm as well, and benchmark and learned a lot in terms of running a business more professionally, understanding how larger organizations operate and how they function. Around the same time, my husband got a very good opportunity to move to Qatar. So both of them, in that, I resigned from my job and I, prioritized my family, and I had my first child and we moved to Qatar. In Qatar, after I took a career break of a year, when my daughter was almost a year old, I went back to workforce. Within 2 weeks of, applying for jobs in Qatar, I got a job with one of the leading companies there, PKF International, and I started working with them. It was pretty straightforward, very smooth. I grew in that company. I worked there for 2 years and, I was growing very well as well. God had other plans as well. My husband got another good opportunity in UAE. And, and at that same time, I fell pregnant. This time, it was not planned, and I had my second child. So I thought, let me take another career break. And with my experience of getting jobs in Singapore and Qatar, I was very confident that UAE is such a huge market, the market is so dynamic, it wouldn't be a challenge for me to get a job at all. I moved to UAE, I moved to Abu Dhabi. I settled down my kids. My daughter was almost 9 months old, and I started looking for a job. But Carlton, when I started looking for a job here in UAE, it became very difficult. 2 months passed, 3 months passed, and I never even got a call for an interview. I started getting worried, why, what is happening? There's something that I'm not doing right, because how is that possible that I'm not even getting an interviews? After a couple of months, I got an interview. And when I went for this interview, they, immediately told me that you don't have any local experience and you've applied for a manager position. We think that, you should join as a consultant. Now, having 10 years of international work experience and going backwards towards being a consultant and starting off your career, I extremely was not, willing to do that. So I said, maybe, okay, this is my first interview in Abu Dhabi, in UAE. Let me take some more time and try to find that kind of a right job. I went for many interviews, and everywhere the people would come back to me and say that, you don't have any local experience, you have international experience, but it is not enough in this market. I became very disheartened. Around the same time, postnatal depression also kicked in, though I always thought postnatal depression happens once you have the baby, right? But here it was almost 1 year I had the baby. But because of this entire, how it was happening, it became very difficult for me because I was not somebody who was used to managing, household or, being at home. I was somebody who was up and running, extremely driven, always on the go, always on super high momentum. And here now I was with the children, trying to settle them down. I had a maid, but the kids, they were very small. They were 2 years and, 2.5 and 1 year. So they were constantly clinging on to me. So that created a lot of kind of depression. And I started realizing as a mother, for me, it was much easier, that when I was doing multiple things and I was fulfilling multiple roles, I was going to work, I was doing so many things, I was a better mother. Versus when I was staying with them completely 24/7, I was not being able to manage it all. And at that point of time, I asked help. I went to a doctor, I saw a doctor, the doctor diagnosed me that, okay, you are into depression and my family was extremely supportive. My husband, my parents, my in-laws, my sisters, my sister-in-laws, all of them, were extremely supportive. My auntie would call me every day and check on me, because the doctors had prescribed that you need to get on medication. You need to start taking a lot of medication to get out of it. But my family, strictly said, no, let's take some time off You focus on your health and, try to come out of it on your own through exercise, going in, doing a lot of yoga. I took a girls' trip, traveled as well. So that helped me come out of it. And during that time, that was a time that I was lowest in my life, because nothing what I planned, I'm a person who plans everything, right? I know exactly, okay, I'm going to do this. This is going to happen. These are the timelines for it. And this is how I need to execute it. But at that point of time, those 2 years in my life, nothing went on as I wanted it to go, right? So it became extremely difficult and, but that time, I think about it now, taught me a lot of resilience. I taught me a lot of humility as well and gave a very different perspective. That is the point of time when my father-in-law also introduced a book called The Secret, and he constantly told me that, see, the problem is when you are thinking that you're not getting the job and your focus is not getting a job, it's making it very difficult. You need to shift yourself towards more of a positive kind of an attitude and things will work out. And within 1 month, I applied for roles, and I found, 2 interviews in the same week. And that's how, when I started, then I went for both the interviews. I cracked both the interviews. One was with a very large audit firm in the region, has been there for a very long time. And the other one was with a company that I eventually worked in Dubai, MBG Corporate Services. When I went for the interview, I had a first round of interview with both companies, with the managers. And the final round of interview, I had with one company who was a senior manager, and the other company was with the chairman and the owner of the company. So I realized where a company, if the chairman and the owner of the company is investing time in terms of hiring a senior consultant, that person is very serious and driven about his business. So I joined MBG Corporate Services and I joined as a senior consultant there. From a senior consultant, I became a partner in 5 years. But that was possible because the organization was extremely driven as well. So I grew with the organization. When I joined this organization, they were less than 40 people. And when I was leaving that organization after 5 years, there were more than 400 people working in that organization. So my entire journey, if I sum it up, it's so important in life that you need to be at the right place at the right time, right?
Esha, just to summarize.
Yeah.
So you started off with your dad.
Yes.
Your dad's business. You ventured into it when 17, 24, you were leading it. From there, you moved to Singapore.
Yeah.
And in Singapore, you started working.
Yeah.
So from a business owner,
yes,
then to move into an employee and then get into motherhood and take a break off. All these transitions may seem very normal to anyone, but they have a lot of ordeal between them. Because it's different identities, a business owner, an employee, a mum, and then again, looking for a job.
Yes.
How did you find resilience? How did you manage? What were you going through when you were doing all these transitions? Because I think that is what made you the person you are right now.
Absolutely.
So a little bit on that,
Yep.
just to encourage everyone who's going through the same right now.
Absolutely, Carlton. So for me, in this entire journey, when I was leading my dad's firm, somewhere what I always felt, I became extremely arrogant, because at 24, if you lead a people of 50, 60 people in your organization, you're just 24, that kicks in, arrogance kicks in as well. And you sometimes start, at that point of time, my father called me in once and told me that, see, it's very, in consulting, it's a people's business. You need to lead people. Running a business is very different. And when I moved to Singapore and I started working in Singapore, I was very mindful. That gave me a lot of understanding being on the other side of the table. See, when you are a business owner, you think very differently, especially when you are a business owner who's not worked with anybody else. So my first job was with my dad, So from day one, my perspective was of a business owner, and this is mine. I'm doing it. I own this. People need to listen to me, right? But then when I started working in multiple firms, I realized, and there's a huge shift in terms of understanding. So from a business owner, I became a leader. That was a very conscious decision, Carlton, that I had to undertake that journey to become a good leader. Because when you're in consulting, people have to follow you, right? Otherwise, in market is so competitive, nobody's going to stay with you. But people can only stay with you because if you lead them to the right direction. For that, I knew that I need to work with a lot of multiple audit firms. And I always had this plan in my mind that one day I would start my own audit firm. But before that, I wanted to take that journey. Even my father, before he started his consulting business, he worked with multiple people, right? So he had that visibility of how it is when you are an employee, how it is on the other side, how you need to understand the perspective of an employee and not always go by the perspective of an employer. That visibility, the leading practices, how businesses are run differently than a family business. Family-owned businesses are run very differently in India. But when you go in a setup that is so organized and so structured, how KPIs are formulated, how meetings are done, all of that, was that kind of a framework and that kind of understanding I evolved when I started working in different companies in different geographies. So that set the stage for me who I am now. It set the complete kind of a framework for me before. So till when I wanted to start my own business, by then I had a complete understanding of how I need to operate and how I need to lead my organization and lead my people.
So you, again, worked your way, got to learn a lot of best business practices from various financial companies or consulting companies.
Yes.
And then right now you are a CEO and a business owner and a leader as well.
Yep.
What made you change again from the job that you took in UAE and start your own?
For me, when I started off, the 2 years of my struggle period initially in UAE, it made me cry a lot, and at that point of time, I thought to myself, I just want one great opportunity. The day I get an opportunity, I will ensure I don't leave any stone unturned on my way to reach to the top. So I was very determined. But why didn't I start my own business at that point of time? My dad also, a couple of times when I wasn't finding anything right, he said, why don't you just start something small? But then I wasn't confident at that point of time. I wasn't confident because I didn't understand the market, what are the dynamics of this market. So at that time I said, I am not ready. And at that time, my kids were very small. So I couldn't take that kind of responsibility, but my priorities were very, very different. But when I started working, I gained a lot of experience. And at the time when in 2022, corporate tax was announced, that's the time when I had to make a decision. If I do not get on my entrepreneur journey, I would miss the boat forever. Timing is very important in your business. The macroeconomic situation of the country or the economy has to support the business that you're doing. And in my case, because the entire taxation, corporate tax was coming in, there would be a lot of changes that would come in. People would start looking in terms of finding new consultants who would want to work on that area. So I had to catch that, boat, and I had to be on that. So that's the reason that from a timing perspective, I had to start my business in 2022. In 2.5 years, we were able to achieve a lot is because of the strategic move of starting at the right time.
What advice would you give for the people who are currently looking out for a job, the ones who have lost their job, students who are looking out for a job?
There is going to be a time for in everybody's life, where they are going to hit rock bottom, right? But the most important is how they react to such situations, and how do they have to support. You need to first work on a support system around you. People who are going to be there. See, because whenever I went rock bottom, the reason I could rise up as a phoenix was because I had a lot of people who were supporting me and who would constantly handhold me. Okay, it's not happening. It will happen. Keep trying, keep pushing yourself. So anybody who is trying to work for themselves, the first thing is you need to work on your community around you. First, focus on building a right set of network and reference group. You have the right people around you. Even if you're not getting a job, they would be there to guide you and say, don't worry, you're going to get the next job. Keep trying, keep pushing through. But what I see in a lot of people is that they all try to work on tandem. They never tell anybody what is their problem. They are in their own silos. They want to, they are not even asking for help. So whenever you need help, be very vocal about it. Go to your network and tell them that, okay, I'm looking for a job. I've seen so many people, they never ever approach anybody. They try to do it themselves, but that for me, for all the young people out there, approach. Tell people that, okay, you need help. You're not getting a job. Maybe check with them if the CV is not right. Like, for example, 3-4 months when I was applying jobs in UAE, I never got a call. Later on realized the way you apply in UAE, your CV must be done very differently. It's not like how it was supposed to be done in Singapore or Qatar or India. In UAE, the format of a CV is very different. having your picture on it is much added advantage, right? So these small things, you need somebody's guidance to support you and tell you, okay, your CV is not right. It's 8-page CV. You need to make it crisp and make it just 2 pages. So you need that kind of a hand-holding, so somebody to help you. That help you have to get in from your own, build that kind of community around you that's going to help you to get whenever you need that kind of help. For me, especially for women who are taking career breaks, when I took a career break, I had so many people telling me, your husband is doing well. Why do you want to get a job now? Take care of your kids. That are your priority. Why do you, and the kind of offers that I were getting me, I would have to pay from my pocket to, keep the nanny, up and running. So at that point of time, there were times, where I also thought, is it worth it, leaving my children and going? But then I realized, for me, my forte has never been at home. That's not my comfort zone. I am a much better mother when I'm not with, 24/7 with my children. I'm a much better mother when I'm doing the things what I like. When I'm doing the things that I like, I get a lot of happiness and fulfillment out of it. When I go home, the hours that I spend is much more quality time that I spend with my children versus when I was staying with them 24/7. So understanding that and realizing who you are as a person is something very important. And I see a lot of people take along, they never even realize who they are, or what they, what is their liking or what is their forte as well, So that is something which is very important for the generation to understand, yeah.
No, you've been very clear from the start when you said that you were working with your dad and then you worked in different companies, that you one day wanted to start something of your own.
Yes.
And again, when the opportunity presented itself, especially about corporate tax in the country, you thought this is the time that you need to get into. And you did. For the people who want to get into this, how does one set up business in UAE?
This is a question that comes my way almost every day. I get a lot of people asking me similar questions. But the most important thing in UAE, and I would want everybody to understand, setting up a company is one thing. Maintaining the company is another thing. It's unlike earlier where you would, choose a free zone and, you check for a, free zone with the lowest budget and, it start. But you need to understand whenever you are trying to start your business in UAE, you need to understand what is your strategy. What is your business plan? For example, I had a customer went and opened something far away in one of the Emirates and then later on realized it was the biggest mistake because he had to, then his entire warehouse was somewhere which is far away and the freight cost of moving the goods and, the transport, everything became extremely expensive. So one of the most important things, Carlton, is understand what is your strategy. Where do you want to get with this business? Is it you're going to be hiring a lot of people? Then you need to take that into consideration because the cost of hiring people in mainland versus in free zones are very different. If your business is not labor intensive and it's more on technology, there are various free zones that are have got good startup programs. So one of the most important thing is do a proper feasibility study or understanding about what your plan is, business plan, make a strategic roadmap, kind of a phased approach that, okay, you are setting up here for a reason. This is going to be my, this is how I'm going to be growing. So how my cost is going to grow also in next couple of years. With that said, also they need to understand, they need to maintain the company. There are a lot of compliances now in UAE. It's unlike earlier, a couple of years back when there were not a lot of compliance. Now there are a lot of compliance, so you have to ensure that you are compliant with the regulation. So it's just not the setup cost for the company or the visa cost. You need to maintain if your threshold is crossed from a turnover perspective, you need to have your VAT filing done, you need to do your corporate tax filing done, you need to maintain your books of accounts. If your threshold crosses 50 million, you need to get your audit done, you need to have your UBO details. So there are a lot of compliances that needs to be looked into. So unlike earlier, it is not just the setup cost, and you can't decide tomorrow, okay, I'm going to shut this business. There is a liquidation process. You need to get clearances from all the authorities. So there's a complete framework that needs to be followed. So don't, and I tell all my customers, a lot of people come, from all over the world now are, wanting to have their presence in UAE. And I get a lot of requests on that front. But I keep telling them is when you are investing into a business, it is your next baby. So be prepared. It's just not the hospital bills that you have to worry about. It's raising that baby till the end. You need to look into all the costs and understand all the parameters. Be it a partnership, be it a sole proprietorship, be it a trading company, any kind of a thing. But you need to be completely aware and have the full visibility of what are you going to be cost in terms of operating this business.
Say, for example, to start up a business, one would need to pay VAT,
Yes.
corporate tax, and if they cross a certain threshold, there are other things that they need to be compliant.
Yeah.
Can you just briefly explain what that is in simple terms so that anyone would understand?
Yep.
VAT first?
So if your threshold, your revenue threshold crosses 375,000, you need to register for VAT.
375,000
dirhams.
Okay.
Yeah. So if your threshold crosses that, you need to register for VAT. And after that, you need to do regular compliance based on the period that has been assigned by the Federal Tax Authority, the FTA. So that is something that has to be done. You can do voluntary registration if your expenses are crossing certain threshold of 187,500. So that if that is crossing that threshold, you can even do a voluntary registration for VAT and then start filing your returns. This is mandatory whenever if your revenue crosses this kind of threshold or your expenses are crossing that threshold. Yeah. Okay. So for corporate tax, your taxable profit should cross 375,000. Then you have to pay a tax of 9% on your profit.
So there's VAT.
Yes.
And in addition to VAT, we have to pay 9% of corporate tax.
Okay. On the profit, on the taxable profit, it's so taxable profit has certain computations. Based on that, you need to pay a 9% corporate tax. Yeah, this corporate tax was introduced from 1st Jan 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if it crosses another threshold of 50 million, you said?
So if your turnover is more than 50 million, you have to get your books audited and then file a return along with that. There are certain free zones that still require you to submit your audited financials on a yearly basis as well. So
even if you're not crossing that threshold.
Yes. So based on where you are located, in UAE there are various free zones and various government authorities. Based on their requirement, you need to follow all the compliances. And all of them have got, different set of compliances. So you need to understand what best suits your business model, right? Where do you want to be located? Which is going to be the best for your business and your strategy in terms of, your long-term goals and plans as well, yeah.
And liquidation, can you just tell us that about the liquidation again? So if I just want to close my company, I can't close it and leave?
No, you can't.
Okay.
See, the thing is, you have to, have a proper mechanism of, closing down your company. Earlier, there was a mechanism where you could strike off the name from the registrar. But now, with the corporate tab, with all the compliances requirement, you need to follow a complete process. You have to do the process and then liquidate your company. There is a huge list of things that you need to do before you close down your company. You need to follow that mechanism when you're liquidating your company.
And what is the time frame approximately? Do you have any idea?
So for me, it takes around 6 months. It depends, if there are a lot of, certain cases, if there are court cases going on, it could take a longer time as well. So you need to get pretty much clearance from all the authorities here that the company is okay to liquidate. They don't have any debts in the market. There is not any kind of claims. You have to, run ads on the newspaper that this company is going to be liquidated. So anybody who has any claims in terms of that needs to be, looked into as well. So the whole process takes you roughly 3 to 6 months. And then if there are court cases or there are any other legal litigations going on, it could take longer as well.
In order for anyone to ask or seek advice to set up a company, trusted partners are what we need to look for. Now, what does a trusted partner look like?
There are some very good consultants in the markets. It again, in consulting, it is people buy from people, right? So you have to have that kind of comfort of whom you're, taking the services from. Unlike products, you can buy from any store, right? But when it comes to advisory and services, you have your own preferences, right? So there are I've been working in this market and in this industry, and there are some very, very strong consultants that are there. So you need to be comfortable, you need to be confident, and you need to trust your partner, right? So once you have that partner, I would suggest you stick to that partner for a long term. Have that as a strategy, especially for compliances. Once you have a trust, once you have a faith in this kind of consultant, you work with that consultant. There are some very, very good consultants in the market. I myself work, and collaborate with a lot of consultants in this market because there are a lot of strengths. Everyone doesn't come with all the strengths, right? So some places I'm very strong, but some places I'm not strong. But I want the best for my customers, right? So at places where I am not very strong, I do partner with other consultants as well. Because what I've seen is the way to grow is collaboration. Right? You need to build synergies. You need to build synergies between yourself. So what I was very fortunate that I partnered and had some strong synergies with a lot of people in the market. So what is my strength? I focus on that. What is somebody else's strength? I work with them. So one thing which is very important, you need to work with each other. You need to build a network of your own people or your own trusted people that you share work with, right? I cannot be good at everything. Similarly, some things I might be the best in the market, right? So try to work, or have at least somebody who guides you in terms of the best of strength and, who are the best in that kind of line of service, yeah.
So from what you said, I understand that in this particular consultant services, it's more of a personal preference.
Absolutely. It's like your doctor, If you prefer this doctor, no matter what, you're going to go to your doctor. So, it's a profession, right? We are professionals. As a profession, it is who you go to. Similarly, if you like a hairdresser, you're going to go to that hairdresser for the rest of your life, If you like somebody, so it's your preference, your choice. So once you're comfortable working with somebody, you're going to be working with that person, So you need to find that kind of a partner or that kind of comfort with who you are going to be operating.
In this case, if a person likes to work with Esha Dsouza,
yeah,
and you change from one organization to another, and I want to still follow you,
yeah,
there would be a dispute, right? There'll be what's that word called?
A non-compete, yeah.
Yeah, a non-compete, yes.
Yeah.
How does non-compete work in this way then?
So, this is something which is, very, very tricky. And I was working with one of the largest companies in this region. And when I started my business, I, of course, had a non-compete. I was categorically trying to, not meet my customers and staying away, because I had a non-compete. But then you can't do much about it. Just as a story, which is very interesting. So I didn't meet this Emirati customer of mine for 3 months. And after I started my own business, I wasn't meeting any of my old customer. So apparently he gave me a call and he had called me and said, I want to meet you. Where are you? I said, sorry, I've just left that organization and, I'm started something of my own. No, I want to meet you. Can you come to my office tomorrow? So I said, I was very hesitant to go, but I have a lot of respect. He's an elderly person and, like a father to me. So I went and met him and, he told me, where were you 3 months? Why didn't you give me a call? So I told him that, I have started my own business and it's not right, that I call you and, I have a non-compete. So he bluntly told me, he said, I don't know which company you worked with. I saw you and I gave you the business, So you need to, so for me, it's you who is very important here. I will work with you. I trust you. So you are the person who I will be working with. I had my partner with me, Mr. Mohammed Usman. So he looked at her and he looked at him and he said that if tomorrow Esha leaves you, I'm leaving with her. So, we all just laugh. So for me, at that point of time, I realized that how much trust is important in this market. And I was so grateful. This gentleman is an Emirati and he's running his business for a very long time. He calls in his CFO and says, they were using a lot of consultant. It was not just my previous company. They were using a lot of consultant. And he told very point blank, stop all the work with every other audit firm and everything will go to Esha and she's going to be working for us for all the assignments going forward. So for me, that kind of a trust, is so much important. So people buy from people. If they like you, they're going to work with you. If they don't like you, they're not going to work with you. In this case, yes, there was a bit of, but it is not something that you are going and, deliberately meeting customers or trying to poach customers. I have, categorically avoided and not been in that position where I go and poach customers or try to meet them. When I was starting my business, consulting business, I had a lot of people, other consulting firms as well who, had made offers and said, wanted me to join them. But some of them I declined because the whole reason that they wanted me to join them was because of the customer base that they wanted to acquire through me, if I can put it that way. So for me, it was never that kind of an intent. My intent was to make my own business and, a firm that, and work towards, having a more sustainable life in UAE, So that was the whole point of starting my own business. Yeah.
Esha, we have 10 minutes.
Yes.
So in 10 minutes, I want to talk about 2 topics. Okay, you let me know if we have time for both of them. So one is will. How important is it to have a will for expats over here? And what are the processes to get a will done?
Yep.
And the other one is savings and investment. So which topic would you want to discuss first?
Both of them are extremely important. First, I would like to talk about the will. Unlike earlier, a lot of people never had any investments in UAE. You know, the maximum would be in the bank accounts, right? But now the entire way, UAE has changed. People are started investing in properties. When you have multiple properties or you've got businesses, it's something which is very important for an expat to have to make their will. Because if you don't have your will, it is as per Sharia law, and everything would be done as per Sharia law. So if there is no will, the Sharia law would be followed and your assets would be divided based on Sharia law, which has a portion to, if for a man, his brother, father, mother and wife, if you have a will, it is done as per your wish. So for me, for my example, me and my husband have already made a will in UAE because we want to ensure that if something happens to both of us together, who has the custody of the children, especially when you have got children, it's very important that, you know exactly who's going to be the custodian of your children, who is going to be the custodian, who's going to be the executor of your will, and how the proportion of your wealth would be divided between your children, who manages your wealth as an executor till they turn 18. So I tell all expats, or all my friends and everybody, that in this part of the world, especially if you have assets, you've got bank accounts, you've got fixed deposits, you've got investments here, make a will and keep. It's very important for you to have your will done in UAE. You can do your will very easily in DIFC, Dubai Courts, ADGM. There are various options available in the market. Again, it depends upon, your choices and how do you want to do it. So a lot of options are available in UAE that it is, and so everything is made so easy, unlike earlier, So you should, every expat who is here at least should have a will made so that their family do not suffer and have a lot of complications after them.
How much would getting a will cost?
It is, again, the rates are very different. You have charges in DIFC, Dubai Courts, ADGM. All of them are very different.
A range? Just for us to understand.
So it would be, Dubai Courts is around, 3,000 is the government fees. When it comes to DIFC, it's around 10,000. So the rates are different. This is the last what I know, from my last understanding. And then there are professional fees for drafting the will and everything. So based on, roughly, I could say it would cost you somewhere around 4,000 to 5,000 to 20,000 dirhams as well, but it is worth it.
Okay, and say for example, I get a will done in India. Would that be valid here?
You will have to get it, notarized from various departments and embassies in both the places. For me, what I recommend is that you should have a local will both in your home country and in UAE based on your assets. For us also, I have done my will in India as well as I have done my will in UAE as well. It's much better, much more safer that you have your will executed in both the places. Because, the laws are very different, so the way they will, so it is much better so that tomorrow nobody challenges it. Because there's always a risk, Carlton, that if you have done, whether the domicile will be valid, whether from that perspective, whether the will hold good here or not, the clauses. So it's much better that you have your will made both in UAE as well as in your home countries.
How does Esha work on savings and investments?
For me, I have been, I was very fortunate. I had a lot of support, from my father who was, in the similar industry and who has got a lot of understanding about the markets. So we've always ensured that we have a systematic investment plan, right? There is a portion of amount that is invested in mutual funds and, in the stock markets. There is a certain portion of funds that are invested in real estate as well. Now, what I tell a lot of people, and a lot of people have conflicting views about this, is whether do you invest in real estate or not. Especially when you're living in UAE, you are going to be paying rent, So it doesn't matter if it's a 1-bedroom or it's a studio, but invest in an apartment. Whether you live in it or you lease it out, still the first thing is, because a lot of people, my friends, even in my network, they're still trying to make the initial down payment money. And the down payment money is going further and further away with the property prices rising. So whatever money you have, whatever budget you have take that and invest. The minute the market is going up, right? So that when you sell it, you're going to have enough money to buy the next property. So rather than waiting that, okay, I don't like this house, this is not something, get every youngster should start thinking of immediately making an investment in real estate. Start with having at least a studio apartment as an investment, or as even if they are staying in it, right? So you kind of mitigate the entire risk of paying the rent or getting a lease or rental out of it. So the most important thing is, when you are living from when you start earning, have a plan that, okay, we are going to be saving this much amount portion of in real estate, this much amount is going to be in SRPs, and the remaining is going to be for your daily expenses. So that portfolio kind of creation is something very important.
So if I'm understanding you right, portfolio creation in order to invest into real estate is you slowly build up wealth in the market, and then if you can, then you invest in real estate as well.
So in UAE, when you are investing in real estate, you need to have a 20% down payment, plus DLD fees. And so roughly it calculates to around 27% is what you need to have a down payment. Now, a lot of my network, a lot of people in my acquaintance have been always trying to collect the down payment.
Okay.
But the problem is, so for example, if you've got 100,000, they like a property worth 1 million. So the down payment roughly is 270,000. So they said, okay, we will save for another 1.5 years and then we're going to get the property. But that property now from 1 million has already become 1.5 million. So you see the down payment keeps on going further away. So when you have 150,000, you need to take that amount and buy at least a studio and not wait for your dream property. Right. Be smart in investing, right? So for me also, when we started off, it is so important that you start off with whatever you have. You need to understand, as the market grows, your valuation or the investment will also grow. So it's not going to get further away, right? Because you are going to be capitalizing on the growth of the market as well. So for example, you bought a 500,000 property by paying 100,000, 150,000 as a down payment. Now that property might have been, in 2 years will become 800,000 or 900,000 with the current kind of growth rate that we are seeing. So when you want to buy a bigger property, the growth will help you with the further increase in the down payment. So you need to very strategically map yourself and not wait. I see so many people make the mistake, especially youngsters, saying that we're going to buy a 2-bedroom. So we're waiting to collect the down payment. That down payment, it'll go further away from you, right? As you wait for 2 years, 3 years. So whatever money you have, buy a studio. Maybe you can't live in that, rent it out. After 1 year, or 2 years, when that goes up, then you can be able to, sell that off and put that money as a down payment for the next property.